So if you're anything like me, you love to save a bit of cash wherever you can. And you've also got a serious drinking habit and a trouserial rash that simply won't bugger off, but that's a whole other video. And one easy way to save money is by shunning those pricey flagship smartphones and grabbing yourself a lovely mid-range blower instead. Google, Samsung, OnePlus, Nothing, and basically every manufacturer apart from Apple now offers a quality smartphone at a mid-range price, boasting capable camera tech, brilliant battery life, impressive specs, and enough grunt for some proper gaming if that's your bag. And I've personally reviewed dozens of these buggers so far in 2025, so here's my roundup of the best mid-range smartphones you can grab yourself right now. And for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do subscribe, ding the old notifications bell. Cheers! Now, one of the very first mid-range Android phones you should have a proper hard squint at is Google's Pixel 9a, which will save you several whiskeys worth of cash compared with those Pixel 10 flagships. The Pixel 9a is another dinky delight at just 6.3 inches, although the rather chunky bezels do mean it's not actually that compact. While Google axing that camera bar has been met with mixed emotions online, ranging from, oh, that's quite nicely streamlined, to, oh my god, I'm actually going to strap a grenade to my cock and f you into oblivion. Well-reasoned, perfectly calm debate. As always, that's the internet for you. The brains of the Pixel 9a is that same Tensor G4 chipset that Google crammed into those flagships, complete with almost all of the usual smart-ass AI-type shenanigans. And this Pixel can still just about manage some Wuthering Waves action on the side, though it is quite a juddery experience compared with some of the other mid-ranges in this best-of roundup. Still, any movie lovers will enjoy that poppy 6.3-inch OLED screen, while the stereo speaker setup is rather respectable. Battery life is excellent, even if the charging speeds aren't quite as impressive. And Google certainly doesn't disappoint on the software support side of things, with 7 years of OS and security updates to look forward to. Which means my Pixel 9a will almost certainly outlive me, unless I somehow manage to curb my insatiable dedication to Greg's lunchtime meal deals. But as always, one of the true highlights of this Google handset is the excellent camera tech. No, the hardware isn't as advanced as the flagship Pixel 9s, but that top-notch image processing smarts means you'll get good-looking pics at almost any time of day. And even if your photos do look a bit crap, well, no worries. Google's editing tools will rescue even the cackiest of snaps. And my full Pixel 9a review and comparison versus the Pixel 10 are live right now. Now, one of my other favourite mid-rangers is the OnePlus Nord 4, a full metal banger that brings back glorious happy memories of those quality phones that HTC and LG used to spaff out. Those really were better days all round, especially as my liver wasn't quite as hurty and I actually had more hair on my head than on my arse. But sadly, this all-metal monster has now been replaced with the not quite as crotch-stirringly fantastic Nord 5. Although you may still find the Nord 4 lurking online for a decent deal. Now, the OnePlus Nord 5 may have reverted to a boring, distinctly not metal design, and also grown in size to a bloody big 6.83 inches, woof. But you still got a smooth and highly satisfying Oxygen OS experience, packed with decent features and not too much of that AI stuff. Although that iconic alert slider has been ripped out and replaced with the plus key, which isn't quite as customizable as you might hope. And OnePlus is still offering 4 years of OS updates and 6 years of security patching, which, while not the best out there, is still pretty ruzzy respectable. That enormous AMOLED screen is gorgeous and responsive to wet fingers, while the stereo speaker arrangement is a bit of a banger too. The OnePlus Nord 5 can get rather toasty under pressure, unfortunately, especially when you are gaming, despite the fact you've got a dedicated cooling system. So you won't want to play Wuthering Waves for too long unless you really want to warm your hands up. Handy for those winter months here in Blighty, perhaps, but also unfortunately the Nord 5 suffers a battery tech downgrade versus the old Nord 4, though mercifully you'll still get a full day of pretty intense action from a single charge. And while the camera results aren't quite as reliable as Google's, this OnePlus Mobile can still produce attractive looking photos even in quite challenging conditions. complete with a fresh new 50 meg selfie cam, which is great news for anyone who doesn't have a face that looks like a cat just threw up its breakfast. And I've also got to big up the OnePlus Nord CE5, which is a bit cheaper but still proper lush. This is a wee bit smaller than the Nord 5 and it loses some features like the plus key, while also adding some great stuff like micro SD memory card support. That AMOLED screen is still a stunner, if not quite as bright, although you do drop down to a crappy mono speaker setup. And while the Nord CE5 isn't quite as powerful as the Nord 5, it also doesn't get hotter than Beelzebub's ballsack when you're gaming. Battery life is brilliant, while the camera tech is fine for everyday shenanigans, even if it does go a bit crazy with the processing at times. And you can have a squint at my full reviews of both of these OnePlus phones, plus a full comparison between them right here on the channel. And also, it's worth pointing out that the OnePlus 13R occasionally goes on sale, dipping it to under 500 quid. And this is a bloody good near flagship quality blower, so well worth grabbing if you want a more premium device. And again, you can see me banging on about that one in depth right here on the Techsperts. Now, if you're tempted to spunk out a big pile of cash for Samsung's Galaxy S25 flagship phone or one of its even bigger, even pricier siblings, well, maybe stick that big wad of cash back in your pants and consider the cheaper Galaxy A56 instead. This capable mid-range smartphone boasts a similar premium water-resistant design to the Galaxy S25, plus almost the same One UI experience and an impressive 6 full years of software support. Although some of those specs have been slashed somewhat to reach a more palatable asking price. So for example, while the Exynos chipset can handle some gaming on the side, tougher stuff like Wuthering Waves can be rather juddery. And that 6.7-inch 120Hz Super AMOLED display has once again grown versus the previous model, and it's ever so slightly brighter as well, while that storage has actually doubled. And the battery life is pretty bloody good, and thankfully the Galaxy A56 isn't horrendously slow at recharging unlike previous generations, while that camera tech is also pretty decent, so Samsung fans should enjoy. Otherwise, for a little bit less cash, there's always Samsung's Galaxy A36. And this is another water-resistant blower with a 120Hz AMOLED screen, stereo speakers, and some rather solid optics for a respectable asking price. Battery life is brilliant, providing stress-free all-day play, although yes, once again that performance is a wee bit shaky. And as with the A56, you've got a full 6 years of software support. And my full review of the Galaxy A56 and A36 is live right now. Oh, and you might also be tempted by Samsung's Galaxy S25 Fan Edition if you can't quite afford those S25 flagships, but frankly, no. It's basically a not much cheaper but quite a bit cacker version of the Galaxy S25 Plus. And you'd honestly be better off just finding a good deal on the old S24 Plus instead. But again, you can check out my full review of the S25 FE if you actually need convincing. Now, moving on, Nothing is another dependable source of quality mid-range blowers, and their latest duo, the Phone 3a and the Phone 3a Pro, are two of my absolute favourites. This slightly chunky smartphone pair sport that iconic glyph disco arse which flashes to notify you of messages, or in time to whatever banging tunes you've chucked on. It's also pretty handy if you want to get somebody's attention or startle a would-be mugger. Flip these phones over and the other end is just as delightful, serving up a poppy OLED display, while the stereo speaker setup is decent enough for enjoying a spot of Netflix, or just the satisfying sound of you beating Gribblies right in their chops with an inappropriately attired anime lass. Speaking of which, thanks to those Snapdragon smarts, the Nothing Phone 3a and the Nothing Phone 3a Pro are nippy enough to play any game out there, even a bit of Wuthering Waves. Nothing OS is as lovable as ever, now bolstered by the surprisingly effective Essential Space, which allows you to set reminders and build your to-do list with just the push of a button. And if you decide to go pro, you'll also enjoy some lovely eSIM support. But the main difference between this pair is that camera setup. Both the 3A and the 3A Pro sport a flexible triple lens arrangement, though the Pro is superior in low light conditions and for any zoom type shenanigans. But all things considered, I'd like to have either one of these literally flashy phones stuffed into my shorts. And if you want to go proper cheap, well, Nothing also offers the immensely affordable CMF Phone 2 Pro. A fully customizable smartphone offering pretty impressive specs for not much more than 200 quid. You can see my full review of this bad boy as well as the Nothing Phone 3A and 3A Pro right here on TechSpert. I've also included the CMF Phone 2 Pro in my best budget phones roundup for blowers that cost under 300 quid. Now, if you're after a mid-range smartphone, well, Motorola seems to spaff out bloody dozens of the buggers every single year, and I try and cover as many of them as humanly possible, to the point where I should actually change the name of this channel to Moto Spurt. And one of their greatest mid-range offerings right now is the Edge 60 Fusion. That supremely slimline design is beautifully complemented by a strokeably soft rear end, making it one of the most standout glamorous blowers in this lineup. The battery life is absolutely stellar, performance is decent, and Motorola has shoved on a few fresh AI features which are rather promising, or at least a lot less bollocks than Apple's attempts so far. The Edge 60 Fusion sports a stunning POLED screen with curved edges, while the camera tech is also surprisingly capable across a range of conditions. In fact, with the exception of Motorola's less than timely update efforts and their slightly weird obsession with dousing their phones in perfume, there's very little to actually mourn about with the Edge 60 Fusion. Now, one of the best manufacturers when it comes to beefy hardware for not much dough is Xiaomi, and definitely check out its latest Redmi Note 14 Pro Plus 5G. And this is yet another well-stacked 6.67 incher, this time with a slightly curved screen as well as a soft touch finish if you grab this purple effort. The frame may be plastic, but you've got Gorilla Glass Victus 2 protecting the front end. And like the previous generation, it's IP68 water and dust resistant, so it can get very mucky and very moist. So overall, it's one of the most rugged mid-range mobiles right now. And while the HyperOS software has plenty of critics, Xiaomi rarely disappoints with the hardware. So that 6.67-inch OLED screen is pleasingly crisp, poppy and bright, with PWM dimming for more sensitive peepers. Performance is respectable too, thanks to the Snapdragon 7S Gen 3 chipset, which can handle even more demanding titles like Weather and Waves, provided you don't boost the graphics settings. The Redmi Note 14 Pro Plus's 5100 mAh capacity battery isn't the biggest here, but a single charge should last you a full intense day, no worries. And if you are nearly drained, well, that's alright, because you've got 120 watt wide fast charging, so it'll fill back up again extremely quickly. Plus, the 200 meg main shooter is decent enough for everyday snapping, even if it does fart out the occasional soft looking pic, especially when shooting portraits. For a few pun less, you can grab the Redmi Note 14 Pro 5G, which may lose those plus plaudits, but it's still a proper mid-range corker. The regular Pro is just as water resistant as the Pro Plus, with that lovely Victus 2 screen protection back again, and it comes complete with the same excellent display and stereo speaker setup. And yes, you once again have that same 200 meg camera slapped on the back end. Not to mention the same capacity battery, although sadly this one doesn't charge up quite as quick. The other big change is the chipset, which has been swapped out for MediaTek's Dimensity 7300 Ultra. Now, this is still fine for gaming with the likes of PUBG and Call of Duty Mobile, but you will struggle with hardcore stuff like Genshin Impact and Weather and Waves. And if you fancy livening up your afternoon with some sweat-inducing three-way action, well, I've compared the Redmi Note 14 Pro Plus 5G, the Redmi Note 14 Pro 5G, and the vanilla Note 14 5G side by side here on TechSpert, so go get that in your eyeballs. And if you've got a bit more cash to spunk on your next mid-range smartphone, I would heartily recommend the Xiaomi 15T. This 6.83-inch monster is quite the handful, but also pretty durable, including full IP68 water and dust resistance. That big, bright AMOLED screen and the stereo speaker setup are cracking for movies and gaming, with full HDR10 Plus and Dolby Vision support. MediaTek's Dimensity 8400 Ultra is in charge, so even the most memory-sucking titles like Weather and Waves play nice and smooth, helped along by Xiaomi's capable cooling system. And you'll get almost 4 hours of weather in action on a full charge of that 5500 mAh battery with those visuals maxed out, while the Xiaomi 15T can happily survive a full day of regular play with plenty of screen on time. This mid-range mobile's 50 meg main camera is bolstered by some Leica processing smarts which help to produce sharp, detail-packed pics with either a natural or a bright and vibrant finish. And you've also got a simple telephoto shooter that works pretty well for portrait shots. So overall, Xiaomi 15T is quite the banger. And there's also a Pro version which is more expensive, but it does upgrade that camera tech for any photography fans out there. And then to make things a bit more complicated, there's also Poco smartphones, and Poco is basically a sub-brand of Xiaomi which reskins their Chinese smartphones which don't launch globally. Apparently Poco means not much in Spanish, and this here Poco X7 Pro certainly doesn't cost much, especially considering the clever pants tech packed inside of this wee bugger. Oh, and quick fun fact, apparently Poco is also Swahili slang for prostitute. Facts that are fun. And the Poco X7 Pro is, hey, another 6.67 inch hand filler with a 1.5K display, although this time the battery is a whopping great 6000 mAh morpho with 90 watts fast charging, so it's a great choice for anyone who has their smartphone glued to their palm most of the day. A Dimensity 8400 Ultra powers this Poco, complete with ice-cool tech for any gamers who just can't get enough of that screen-mashing Wuthering Waves action. And yes, you do get the same HyperOS software setup as Xiaomi's Redmi Note 14 blowers. A 50 meg rear camera using Sony's IMX882 sensor is backed by a basic 8 meg ultra-wide shooter, and the Poco X7 Pro is okay for everyday snaps, if rather unremarkable. And hey, if you've got a thing for dead Marvel dudes, there's always this Iron Man edition. Sorry, bit of a spoiler alert for Avengers Endgame there, if you somehow haven't managed to see it these past 5 years. Alternatively, there's also the Poco F7 Pro, where the F stands for flippin' heck, that's pretty good value for money. And this is another beefy blower boasting a crispy 6.67 inch screen as well as a 6000 mAh battery, just like the X7 Pro. But this time, however, it's a Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 in charge for a supremely smooth gaming experience, while the 50 meg main camera swaps that sensor for the Lite Fusion 800 to pump out head-noddingly solid shots. And for slightly less cash, you can also snaffle the regular Poco F7, which is an even bigger beastie at 6.83 inches. That design is certainly eye-catching, and it's once again fully water resistant, although quite a few of the specs have been downgraded. So for instance, you get a less crispy AMOLED screen, a not quite as lush stereo speaker arrangement, and a different camera setup too. Still, the Poco F7 should keep gamers happy enough despite switching the chip to a Snapdragon 8S Gen 4, while you actually get a bigger 6500 mAh battery stuffed into that sizable shiny chassis. Next up, the Honor 400 Lite, an absolutely monstrous blower with a poppy AMOLED screen, big old battery, and a selfie cam that's ideal for those sexy club snaps. Plus a camera button that's somehow less rubbish than the iPhone 16 Pro's, despite the fact that Apple's brick costs 4 times as much. Honor appears to have taken quite a lot of inspiration from Apple, unfortunately, for one matching that boxy design, although at least the 400 Lite packs in some AI tools that aren't total toilet. You've also got double the storage of a regular iPhone, while the crisp and punchy 6.7 inch screen features a similar floating turd notch up top. Even the camera results are iPhone-esque with oversaturated pics and boosted colours. As for the performance, well, sadly more demanding games do struggle, but optimised apps like PUBG and Call of Duty fare just fine. So if you fancy an iPhone beat-and blower for a fraction of the price, well, check it out. Or if you fancy yourself a dedicated gaming smartphone without spunking out ridiculous amounts of cash, well, point your eyeballs at the REDMAGIC 10 Air. You got some of the best REDMAGIC features stuffed in there, including responsive shoulder buttons and a seriously stacked gaming toolbar to give you a leg up in PUBG, etc. While the older Snapdragon chipset and the more basic cooling setup can still cope admirably with the toughest memory guzzling titles out there, including Wuthering Waves. And oh yes, you still get that hilarious waifu smartphone assistant, Mora. And if you haven't been acquainted with Mora in the past, well, just imagine Alexa if she was incredibly horny and you could play dress up together.
I'm warning you, Commander. You're making a risky move.
Oh, so who needs Genshin Impact when you got this?
Hey, there are no switches there.
You tell them, Mora, get HR involved. And if you can actually find the bastards somewhere online, I would also merrily recommend the Vivo V60, especially for any camera fans out there, as it boasts some proper good Zeiss branded optics. The V60 is also a cracker if your face is constantly stuck in your smartphone, as the almighty 6500 mAh battery is one of the biggest in this roundup. An upgraded Snapdragon chipset means hardcore games like Wuthering Waves play nicely, while movie fans will also love the crisp, poppy display. But yes, it is most definitely an import job here in Blighty. And there you have it, my lovelies. That in a delicious wee nutshell is my roundup of the best mid-range smartphones you can grab yourself right now here in the UK in 2025. And as usual, I've only included smartphones that I've personally played with, had my SIM slipped inside of, and fully reviewed here on TechSpert, so I may have missed out your own personal preferable mid-range mobile. If I have, please do let me know what a massive northern prong I am down in the comments and clue us all in as to what you would personally pick. Please do poke subscribe and ding that notifications bell for more on the latest and greatest tech. Still quite a few mid-range mobiles lurking on the horizon, so I'll probably no doubt have to update this video once again before Santa squeezes his bulbous arse down your chimney. And make sure you have yourselves a ruddy, wonderful rest of the week. Cheers everybody, love you!